heading over to our interview Konamanje with the most amazing and fantastic Mr. Erik Vermeulen. God, so Konamanja, Mr. Erik Vermeulen is going to take us through what he does basically for the organization that he works at. And he is also a keynote speaker, MC, and a facilitator. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And for a change, it's a bright, sunny morning in Gauteng.
Absolutely, absolutely. I promise you, Erik, you and I are on the same page when it comes to that one. The one thing that I always share with the team here every morning, especially when it's cold, is that I'm one of those people who absolutely hates and dreads the cold season. But like you just mentioned, that today, for a change at least, we're having a bright, sunny, and slightly warmer morning. So thank you for that. You and I are on the same boat with regards to that, man.
No, for sure. I mean, we were starting to think we'd actually all moved to the UK in the last 4 months.
Absolutely,
but you know what?
Absolutely.
The upside of that is the dams are full. There's lots of water going around for the dry season up in Joburg. And now with dry winter coming, we can send all our rain down to Cape Town.
Yes, absolutely. No, man. Erik, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we don't take it for granted. I mean, of course, it would have been more ideal to have you right here in studio, physically seated right next to me. But God willing, in the future, you and I, and of course the rest of the team, can be in the same space, man. So without further ado, Erik, quickly, for someone who's not aware of who you are and all of the work that you do, who is Erik? Now, what are the spaces that he's involved in and the work that he does?
Well, it's a very long answer if you want all the details, but essentially I combine two worlds, that of behavioral strategist and mind coach, motivational speaker, and I combine that with adventurer and expedition leader. So I work with corporates, I work with teams, I work with sports teams and elite sportsmen to see how can we become more passionate about the potential that we have within ourselves personally, within our teams, and how do we realize that within our businesses through the cultures that we build and the way we work together.
And for someone who's not aware of what behavioral strategy is, and leadership, and because we always hear these terms being thrown around all willy-nilly, and someone is saying, no, I'm strategizing, or I'm trying to get into a course of leadership, and all of those things. How can you try and very quickly simplify it and break it down, but as well as get to a point where one can very quickly and easily so comprehend and understand what you're talking about?
Look, I mean, we use the word strategist because strategists get paid more than others, but and I say that as a joke. But essentially, what I do is I try to understand the psychology of the way people approach life, how we approach risk, adventure. How do we keep ourselves motivated, both from a personal perspective and then also from a self-leadership, but the perspective of leading others. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to lead yourself first before you can lead others. And only once you can lead others can you lead organizations. And those three steps are part of the kind of process that I address through understanding the psychology of decision making, the psychology of motivation, and that sort of very basic element of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is around safety, security, and then thirdly, affiliation. And, the kind of, I want to say, trauma that the world has been through over the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
There's so much more emphasis based on this idea of connection, of that no man is an island. But traditionally, there's actually very little done in terms of upskilling and education of how we get people to work together. And I think it's almost being compounded by the last 5 years, where we had 2 years of very different interactions with people. And what I'm seeing my corporate clients asking for more and more now is saying, Erik, just help us work with other people again. Get us to understand how the world doesn't just revolve around me as an individual, but around how I fit into a complex society or a complex ecosystem where, yes, I want to win, but other people need to win as well. And how do we navigate this idea within a team or within a business to see how we just create something whereby everybody gets their place in the sun? And more importantly, how do we understand the process of success? Because success is never a once-off event. It's always the result of lots of small little events that I've either purposefully worked towards or that may have aligned through luck and the work that we've done or the places that we've put ourselves in.
Yeah, no, man, very, very interesting stuff. Mwanakocha, you're perhaps wondering who Afri and I are in conversation with. It says here, behavioral strategist Erik Vermeulen brings over 20 years of leadership and consulting experience in growing the leadership skills of leaders across several industries. His strategies allow leaders to create more profitable behaviors by examining how their teams work and how they interact with their employees as well as their customers. So look, man, you've mentioned that, or perhaps, and I stand to be corrected. You'll absolutely correct me on this one. But you're someone who says, they can't motivate, but they can influence someone to do what they are motivated by. So for someone who's not aware of those two terms, right? Because like I said earlier, we've heard these terms being thrown around all willy nilly, everywhere on social media, in our workspaces and stuff like that. Motivating someone versus influencing someone. What are the differences, and how do you recognize when someone is influencing you as opposed to motivating you, and vice versa?
It reminds me, I'm going to probably give you a slightly longer answer, but
Sure.
2003, which is a heck of a long time ago, I remember
Yes.
getting a phone call from a guy named Coach Quibus. And Coach Quibus phoned me on a Wednesday morning. And he said, look, Erik, I coach a rugby team. We've lost our last 4 games. We really have to win our next game. We found you online. We see you've played international sport, etc. Can you come and speak to our team so that they can, because we have to win our next game? I said to him, well, when's your next game? He said to me, it's on Saturday. And the more I tried to explain to him that motivation isn't something that we can just dish out through a talk or something like that, the more he said to me, yeah, but please, can't I come through? And so it so happened that he was the coach of a high school rugby team, and they were in Middelburg and in Mpumalanga. And I was driving through there the Friday morning anyway to go to Kruger National Park for the long weekend. So I said to him, look, let me come and do this for free. I'll just come and do this because I'm going to drive past there anyway. And I did an hour with the guys. And really all I spoke to them about was, and I say it over and over again, the process of success. And my first question to them was, why do you play rugby or sport, or why do you go to work? I mean, so that question is universal. But I said to them, why do you play rugby? And they said, because we want to win. And then I said to them, and that's exactly why you're not winning. You see, winning isn't about wanting to win as much as it is about understanding what we need to do in order to win. And so when it comes to influencing or motivating, I can stand on stage and I can speak to the team or to your company, and people can walk out of that going, wow, that was great.
Yeah.
And we're kind of motivated to maybe go and do something. But guaranteed, and I've been doing this for 26 years and internationally, so I'm probably not too bad at it. But guaranteed, within a week, 90% of the audience would have forgotten 90% of what I told them.
Yes.
And so it's far more powerful from my position as a speaker or a consultant, but especially from your position as a leader. And leadership isn't around your title at work. It's around the initiative you take in the position that you hold. But the more you can find ways to influence the behaviors of others through what you consistently do, through what you consistently say, through how you support the results of others, through understanding the process of success, then motivation becomes far more sustainable and long lasting, because we're influencing what people are motivated to do. I use a model that I call the gap model. And essentially, every single one of us have this gap between where we are now, our current state, and where we want to be, our future state. And that future state could be a long weekend that's coming up, or it could be getting your degree, or it could be anything. And the time space span between where you are now and where you want to be could be a couple of hours, it could be a couple of days, it could be a year or several months. But ultimately, the gap between where you are now and where you want to be creates tension and discomfort within you. And that tension and discomfort gives you the motive to take action. And if you think about the word motivation, it is about the motive to take action. So the more conscious we are of where we are and where we want to be, and the process that we have to follow in order to get to where we want to be, that is how we influence what people are motivated to do.
Very, very interesting. I love how you break it down and say it is the motive to take action. I love that so much. I love that so much. So, look, man, like you mentioned, you've been doing this for a lot of years, right? It's been over 20 years now, and you've spoken to countless of people all over the world, and try to get them on the right track and on the right path. And I'm sure in all of these talks you've seen quite successful stories, right? And so let's try. Is there now, habits that you can say you've picked up, or habits that you've witnessed and experienced yourself that are associated to all of these successful stories? Because you just mentioned that you can come into a company or have a talk somewhere, and people can walk out of there very amped up, very motivated, and feel like, you know what, Erik was great. I'm ready to go. But a week later, more than half of those people in those companies, in those talks, have forgotten 90% of the stuff that you mentioned. So what are some of the habits that you can say, go hand in hand with successful stories and successful companies that have come from the talks and the motivation that you've given over the years?
There certainly are a few. And for me, the first one is we have to understand the concept of adventure. And, so I say I marry these two disciplines of the consulting, speaking stuff, but I also lead adventure expeditions to some of the highest mountains on the planet and to the coldest points on Earth. And there's a very clear synergy there, because the biggest obstacle to success is comfort. And our rituals and our routines create for us the sense of comfort. And so the first thing that we have to do to make motivation sustainable is to make it a habit to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so by that I mean we need to constantly see, well, how do I step out of my comfort zone? How do I try something new? And it doesn't have to be massive. It just has to be a little step out of what you're familiar with. And every time you step out of the boundary of your comfort zone grows, and you learn a new skill, you learn a new attitude. You often actually surprise yourself by what you're really capable of. We've got so many stories from the adventure space around that. One of which, we were horribly smashed on a mountain called Aconcagua in South America in 2016. So much so that we eventually summited the mountain days after we had planned to. We'd run out of food. It just was quite rough. But we started summit morning with not enough food. And so that day we spent 5 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock that night, getting to the summit and back to our tents. Went to sleep, no food. Walked down to base camp the following morning, and then 27 kilometers from base camp to the park gate.
Jeez.
On no food. Now, if I told you you were going to exert yourself at a very high level for close to 30 hours without having a proper meal, you tell me that is not possible.
It's crazy, absolutely.
But it is crazy, but your body doesn't know that, right? Your body will find ways to survive. It will access different energy systems. In any area of discomfort, whether it's at work or in life, it is your mind that checks out first, not your body. And your mind convinces your body that you can't do that. So the first thing is make it a habit of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. The second thing that you got to understand is, I mentioned this concept of adventure. And when we realize, so adventure is not a set of activities. It's not going for a hike on the weekend or riding your bike or going to climb a mountain. Adventure, by its definition, is any endeavor of which the outcome is uncertain, like business, like your job, like waking up in the morning. There is zero certainty that you would make it home alive tonight.
Absolutely.
Zero. But we kid ourselves that life is permanent because of the rituals and the routines. Because we're so busy being busy, we don't realize how fragile we are. A really good friend of mine posted on Saturday night. He went for a 100-kilometer bike ride in Saturday night with lights and everything. Yesterday morning on another ride, he was knocked over by a car and killed.
Sheesh, man.
Right. This is how fragile life is. So firstly, embrace discomfort. Secondly, embrace the adventure of life, because nothing is certain.
Embrace
The
the
third
adventure
thing-
of life. Very, very interesting stuff. Like, I wish you were in studio with us. Erik, I feel like the vibrations and the energies would be crazy, crazy, and out of this world. And look, man, because we can't have you here in studio, with the power of technology, we're able to connect with you, right? And we're living in a society and a world essentially that is so tech driven, social media influenced, and all of those things. So you with all of those things being said, how do you then advise people that you have talks with, and just in general in life, as we go on about with our daily lives in society, and in the workspaces that we're involved in and everywhere else? How do you then advise people to try and stay up to date, and not lose themselves, and stay motivated essentially, and stay on the path that they're trying to be on, and get to the successes that they are chasing? How do you then advise them to not lose themselves with so much technology that is influencing our current lives in today's world?
Yeah, I would say the biggest comparison is the biggest thief of happiness. And social media has given us this ridiculous platform to constantly compare our lives with everybody else's. Let's be honest, guys. No one puts the shitty stuff on their timeline.
Yeah.
They're all putting the cool stuff on. No one's life is perfect. No one's life is that cool. And what kills our joy, what kills our motivation, is this fact that it is now so easy to compare who we are or who we think we are with everybody else. You are on your own journey. You are on your own process. And as long as you stick with that process, and the process is right, you will become immeasurably successful in however you measure success. And so because we're comparing ourselves, this measure of success has become overtly materialistic. And we get so caught up and worried about where we live and what car we drive and what we wear and how we look, that it robs us from the joy of the adventure of life and the joy of the adventure of building the success that we want, which we will get when we are ready to deal with it.
That is some pretty inspirational words out there. So just before we let you go, I'd like to touch base on the something that you created around COVID. I heard that you're like one of the co-creators of the Bright Rock Battle of the Sports. So would you mind taking us through that for a bit, just before we let you go, so we can learn about it? And I hope it's still around, so you can tell us more about the latest work that you've also done with it.
Right. So, I mean, every couple of years, I set myself a personal challenge, whether it be to set a speed record or a climbing record or something. And in 2019, I had this idea of walking unsupported, unassisted across Makgadikgadik Pans in Botswana. It's about a 200-kilometer trek. Anyway, then COVID came around. And pre-COVID, some ex-retired international cricketers got to hear about this walk that I wanted to do, and they phoned me and said, how can they join me? So when COVID came around, and I was looking for sponsorship for this project, in a sponsorship call, somebody said to me, "So Erik, how many times could you walk this 200 kilometers?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" They said, "Could you do it 3 or 4 times?"
Sheesh.
So I said, "Well, there's only one way to find out, right? And let's try." And so Battle of the Sports was what we created from that. And the idea was, every weekend around the social, the braai, where we're sitting and having our beers, watching football and stuff. Every weekend there's this debate: which which sport breeds the toughest sportsman? Are rugby players tougher than soccer players? Are soccer players tougher than cricketers? And are road runners just bonkers and tougher than everybody else? And so while there was nothing on TV in 2020, I phoned Supersport and I said, "Look, guys, this is the concept. 4 teams from 4 sporting codes competing to see which team can cover the 200 kilometers the fastest, unsupported, unassisted, with me being the leader for each team." And Supersport told me that at that point they would broadcast the opening of an envelope. So absolutely, if we can produce the show, they would produce it, or they would screen it. And that is what the Battle of the Sports was all about. So it was myself with Team Rugby, John Smits and Yanni Shamangi and Skulk Brits, with Team Soccer, Teko Modise, Siabonga Nomvete, and Matthew Booth.
Yes.
Team Cricket with Lance Klusner, Mondi Zondeke, and Makaya Ntini. And then we had Team Comrades, or Team Road Running, which had David Khatebe, Bongusa Mtembu, and Lady Jenna Challenor, to see which team could cover 200 kilometers around a place called Verneekpan in the Northern Cape, the fastest. And we raised just over R1 million to support vulnerable communities affected by COVID.
Yeah.
And we had about 60 odd hours on Supersport as a reality TV series. That was what we did in 2020. Will it happen again? Very, very unlikely that it would happen again.
Oh man, but it sounds so cool. It sounds so interesting. I mean, having all these great athletes and sportsmen that we've watched over the years, and people who've done amazing stuff in their respective fields, with regards to sports. I personally would love to watch that. We should bring it back and maybe try to bring people who are in sports right now, who are on the fields, and people who are representing our favorite teams and our national team. Of course, it would be so cool to see that, man. I would love for something like that to happen. But no, thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge. I wish you were here in studio, but God willing, in the future we can have you right here in studio with us, so that you can share more, of course, because I feel like there's so much that we didn't touch and we didn't get into. The conversation of motivating and influencing, and trying to get people to their successful ends, I personally feel is an unending one, and we can never raise enough noise about it. So thank you for that one. But very quickly, for someone who's very interested and found what you were saying very fascinating and intriguing, how can one reach out to you across social media? Perhaps is there a WhatsApp line that you have? Is there a website and all of those things?
Yeah, we do have a website. Website is ridgelineza.com. And I see you've shared on screen my social media handles. On Instagram, it is ridgeline_global. And if you want to get hold of me on WhatsApp, my WhatsApp number is 083-603-7119. And that's probably the easiest. Reach out to me on email as well. That's probably